Okay, continuing on with part 2 of our video, we read on the timeline that he settled in Pennsylvania. So let's read about that.
In 1797, John settled in Pennsylvania. He collected apple seeds from nearby cider mills. Pressing apples to make cider, 1800s.
So we learned about how he pressed apples in our last story too. Remember the horses had the big stones, the wheels that pressed the apples, and it would crush out all the apple juice into cider?
Timeline. 1774, born. Around 1794, travels west. 1797, settles in Pennsylvania.
So we know this already.
John knew that apples were a good food that would last through the long winter. He planted the apple seeds. Apple trees began to grow on his land. Timeline. 1774, born. Around 1794, travels west. 1797, settles in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so nothing new on the timeline yet, but we do know that when he was in Pennsylvania, he planted all those apple seeds from our last one. So maybe that's something that you might want to add to the timeline to show that he planted apple seeds in 1797 too. That could be an event you could add to your timeline.
John dug up some of the young apple trees. He planted new orchards with them. Timeline. 1774, born. Around 1794, travels west. 1797, settles in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so we know all those dates so far. Here we see, though, people picking apples. They have these cool little tools to reach up and pick them so they don't have to climb the trees.
In the early 1800s, John moved west again. He moved to Ohio. He sold or gave apple seeds and trees to many settlers there.
Okay, so here he starts giving the
Picking
apples.
1800s. Early 1800s, moves to Ohio.
All right, so he's moved even farther west, and he started giving his apples and helping other settlers that were settling down. So clearly, this shows what we already know about him, that he was a kind person, very giving.
Timeline. 1774, born. Around 1794, travels west. 1797, settles in Pennsylvania. John liked to read books. Sometimes he read to the settlers. Other times, he told stories about himself and his apples. Johnny Appleseed, on floor, reading to settlers. Early 1800s, moves to Ohio.
Okay, so when he's in Ohio, he would read books to the settlers or tell stories to the settlers about himself and his apples. So maybe that's something you'd want to add to the timeline too.
Timeline. 1774, born. Around 1794, travels west. 1797, settles in Pennsylvania. In 1838, John moved to Indiana. He sold apple seeds and trees to the settlers. He helped the settlers plant orchards. Johnny Appleseed, planting an orchard. Early 1800s, moves to Ohio. 1838, moves to Indiana.
Okay, so now we see he's moved even farther west and he's still helping the settlers. Video.